Hey, it's Saturday afternoon late, and I was in the shop doing something, and I thought of something that I need to tell you about. I made a video a while back. There's a stump grinding guy need a chainsaw. Well, actually, a lot of you have been buying SG40s, smaller machines, and truthfully, don't work the machine to death. All right, you can help the machine last longer by buying yourself at least a good chainsaw. Now, a real good professional grade chainsaw right now they could be 1,500 and above. All right, maybe I'm off a little. Just depends where you're at and what part of the United States. I run Husqvarna's, but I've also discovered, and I'll put a link in the description, I've gotten from my guys here as backup saws, because during the pandemic they couldn't get the big steel saws. They run steels. So I found a source, and I'll put a link in the description off of Amazon. You can get it. But I found a source, and you want the newer ones of these. They're Neotech, and they're clones of the Steel 660, which is 90, don't hold me to it, 92, 93 cc's. It's a big saw, okay? So you can get those between $3 and change to $450. And the guys here have been buying them as backup saws for using the last cuts of different things, or if one of their saws goes to a shop. So they've been buying them and they love them. I've got a YouTube short of one of those saws running and cutting a big 50-inch or bigger silver maple, and you can hear how it runs. They love them. And now they make climbing saws, Neotech does. And I got two guys that, some guys don't have credit or able to order things off the internet. I got them two Neotech, their new climbing saws. I'll put a link in the description for those two. And they're using them for backups, or one guy loves them because they're lighter. I'm just being honest with you. So back to what this video is about the chainsaw and chains, okay? Say if you're running a smaller grinder, 252, or even a big one like I do. And I'll put a link to another short in there that it was like, I don't know, 8-foot oak that they flush cut it as low as they could, but it mounded up into dirt. So they couldn't get really low for me. So what we did was ground all the way around it. This is what I'm trying to teach you to do. Even if you have a small machine, grind all the way around it to where you can get below that humping crest. And then you're a member of there's a joke on the internet or whatever, they cut it lower club. You cut it lower, and it really does cut down your time of grinding. I know you're somebody who's frustrated or whatever. I got a big grinder. No, I have a big grinder, but even with me, it leaves less chips. When I get one of these nightmare ones or whatever, we grind all the way around it, and then we cut it. A lot of times the tree company is there, so they do it for me, and they don't mind. It's less chips to pick up. All right, so that's one thing. So you need a saw at least 50 cc's or bigger. All right, in that case over here, I'm going to show you a saw. If you're just starting out, I really don't want you to buy this, but these saws are crap. Hold on. These saws that you buy at Walmart and all this stuff, they really are crap. I don't want you wasting your money on this. These Poulan things, please don't. I know if that's all the money you got or whatever, but just save up for a few bucks more. Look on the link and buy a bigger saw from like Neotech. Or if you've got a Tractor Supply or someplace like that, a good older Husqvarna Rancher, the 455. I got by with that forever. You want the very minimum a 20-inch bar, but the 455 Ranchers came with 24s. So that's something you really want. All right, and here's the deal. The Rancher is kind of in between a real pro saw and a consumer saw. It'll last you. If you're just a stump guy, it will last you. Okay, and I've got one here. I mean, good Lord, this one's like from 2007. I had these on my truck. This one I got to do a little work on. It still runs, but left it on the ground and somebody ran over it with a skid steer, the back end, and got the hand grip part, you know. What I normally carry around with me, besides the new Neotech clone, I normally carry either a 562. I like Husqvarna, I've just been around it. Or I have another one. I used to always run 372s, and they were big enough for me. But that Neotech is 90, the Husqvarnas were 72 cubic inches. Let's say CC, excuse me. Yeah, and the steel 660s are 93 cc. So you see, you got a lot more displacement. It really does work. The saw doesn't have to work as hard. I don't recommend, if you're not used to a big saw, even that one's a big saw for the normal person. I haven't even got my son up to using one of those yet, okay? Because saws can be very dangerous, all right? So once you learn how to use a saw, there's all kinds of safety things, and I'll try to show you in the field. I'll make a couple of shorts on it. A lot of guys get into accidents by walking with a saw without the chainsaw brake flipped. All right, and I've seen guys cut across their legs in a brush pile, fall, pull the trigger, and I almost lose their legs. I mean, they went to the hospital. From now on, they look like they, you know, an alligator killed them or whatever. You know, when you're walking with a saw, you never take your hand off the bar. You just use your wrist, and it clicks the brake on. All right. If you have an old saw, like say somebody gave you a professional old McCulloch or whatever, and it doesn't have a brake, and if you're new to chainsaws, I don't want you even touching it. Don't even touch it. If you're not used to a chainsaw, it'll kill you. All right? I'm trying to scare you, but I'm trying to scare you into the right thing. Now, stump grinders, I might get a lot of arguments on this, but the best chain to have, since we're cutting the last parts of the tree, which is dirty wood, got to understand, that stump, if you're in an urban environment like I am, that's where the lawnmowers went around and blew all the garbage onto that trunk. The tree grew up out of the ground, so it has minerals in it and dirt around that lower part. So it dulls your chain. That's even my tree guys, they hate making the last cut. All right, so the best chain to have is a carbide chain. Very, very expensive. Hardly anybody will sharpen them unless you find somebody special. You need a diamond wheel on it to sharpen one. You know, that, and expense-wise, I don't see you doing it. I know about them because I was in the fire service. That's what we used, okay? Now, the next chain to use, if you're running even a 24-inch bar, it's called skip chain. A lot of guys didn't know what they are, and they're also known by ripper chains. All right, I think I'll try to find a link for a place you can get them, and it may even be on Amazon. I'll put a link. Skip chain is, let me get this bar up here so we can see on here. Okay, a skip chain is missing, like basically like every other link. So if let's say you're running a medium saw, it gives it more power because it's not grabbing as much and hard. Also, those same chains are known as ripper chains, and those are used by guys that have sawmills to go sideways across. All right? So that's another thing when a skip chain's good for, because normally on a stump, okay, you're cutting it like this, but sometimes if your bar is not long enough or whatever, you can make a slice down the sides of it, and it will cut. Skip chain, it'll do very well, because that's the ripper chain is used on a sawmill that goes sideways down a log. Okay, so a lot of people don't know that, and I just want to let you know that. And they're very reasonably priced, sometimes the same price as a chain on your chainsaw. And there is a difference between professional chains and regular chains, like for these small pull-in garbage or whatever. They have a safety link on it to where it makes sure it doesn't grab as much, so it doesn't have kickback. Kickback is when that saw, if you happen to be touching near the tip or whatever, the saw will kick back. And I've seen guys that got hit here and grazed their nose. I have one guy that has a scar permanently across his eye from a kickback. And it didn't get in his eyeball, but it got straight across here. So he's got the mark of Zorro on him for the rest of his life. Another thing, if you're running even the skip chains or even a regular professional chain, typically ripper chains are all semi chisel. Full chisel chain is used on the softer woods. It cuts very fast, very aggressive. It's a great cutting chain, except for one thing. It don't like dirty wood. It will get dull in a minute in dirty wood. Some of you guys might argue with me or whatever, but I'm just telling you up front. In dirty woods, down below, a full chisel works great for just a little bit until you hit some dirt. So it's a semi-chisel, so is the ripper chain, right? Remember that, semi-chisel. So it's got like a little curve on it or whatever. You go on Google or YouTube, and other guys are true professional chain guys will show you every inch of it, all right? Another thing is, I've got a cheap little sharpener here. Let me turn this camera, I don't know if you can see it. Right here, that sharpener is probably 10, 15 years old from Harbor Freight. And your chains, when you're doing the stump stuff, you will dull them very fast. So even a cheap grinder like this, you could keep a little edge on it. I started doing my own because I sent them out to a professional shop, let's say one of our big lawn places here. I brought him 5 chains. I said I'd come back the end of the week. And at that time, I don't know, it was $7, $6 a chain, whatever. I came back, he destroyed all my chains. And they brought it to me at the parts counter, and they went through a quarter of my links. They didn't set the depth proper. I said, what the hell is this? They said, oh, maybe you should have just bought new chains. I look at the guy, excuse me? These chains only got, one hit on them, and I brought them here to get sharpened while I went out. And that's when I started doing my own stuff. I was so pissed up. I had to keep my composure. They didn't want to admit the guy was a moron in the shop in the back that did them. Somebody didn't really care. Somebody, you really didn't care. I stopped going to that place just because of that. And I talked to other tree guys in town, and they were like, yeah, we don't go there anymore. Destroyed my chains. So a lot of those guys take it to another place that does a lot of sharpening of a lot of stuff, a professional sharpening place, and they drop them off there. And if I've got one that's hit real bad or whatever, I'll take it there. These guys are just awesome. For me here, I've got dozens of old chains. I just keep going with them until they get so far. You'll know when you're done. There's a mark on the chain. If you go too far, throw it away. Right? But there's one more thing you need to know about chains. And even I, who talk about you learn something new every day or you must be dead, remember? So I learned something. I learned something from a professional saw shop that modifies chainsaws. And he had sent me some chains I ordered, rippers, and he told me, he said, these are not pre-stretched chains. And I was like, what? And he said, because I just always bought chains. I knew about chains, but I didn't know this one thing about chains. I have to raise my hand and say I didn't know, I was stupid, or maybe no one taught me. So I'm teaching you. There are chains that are pre-stretched. Have you ever bought a chain before, put it on your chainsaw, and noticed, man, I got to retighten it after one tank of fuel. Well, that's all. That chain is not pre-stretched. The steel hasn't been pre-stretched. So there are chains, I think a lot of steel chains are pre-stretched. And it also, the steel on the chains, some of them like Oregon chains and some of these other chains are softer, easier to file. A steel chain, steel, I'm not talking about like steel like the metal, I'm talking about the chainsaw brand, all right? Or have a different kind of chromium or whatever, they hold their edge longer, but they're harder to sharpen with a hand file. I am not a hand file guy. I don't know why, I tried or whatever, and it's just not my forte. How about other guys in the field that file after they hit something, even from a stump for me, and they're fine, they got it. They've been doing it so long, they basically got their eyes closed. For me, I'm kind of a perfection type guy. Like, oh, that ain't right, that ain't, it's not cutting as good or whatever. Whatever. So either learn how to sharpen them yourself on a deal. This is just a cheap one. It'll do you for a stump guy. If you're a tree guy, you know, they got a lot of them guys got somebody on the crew that knows how to file the saw really well, the chain, or they send them out. You know, because you know they're big saws, the only one touching the ground really. So a lot of guys I know keep one saw just for the final 2 cuts. You know, like we would be doing. So anyway, that's just a little tidbit about chains and chainsaws. Make sure your chainsaw is at least 50 cc or more to get you through there. And if it's a lower cc, try to get it skip chain, or also known as ripper chains. And there's pre-stretched and there's chains that are not stretched, that they will stretch out on you, okay? Also, one more thing, you will try to find it. There's a very good guy on YouTube that shows you how he makes his chains. He buys a chain by the roll. You will save half the amount or more by buying chains on the roll. And I may do that later on this winter and make me a setup similar to his. Anyway, I kept you too long. God bless you. I love you guys. Thanks for watching the shorts. I really appreciate it. It's fun for me to do with my son. See you next time.